So I guess I'm wondering then, like, why think that like we need this process for of like significant freedom for like divine love? Because I could hear like an atheist or someone thinking right here, like, so you're telling me that like a self-creating creation, a sense of God, like creating some sort of evolutionary process which can like have creation, in a sense, like bring forth like other beings, like all that like suffering and languishing, like that's the reason. Like surely there's more, or like something like this, like when we reflect on like maybe like millions of years of animal suffering and whatnot, or like deadly parasites, or all these like horrors that seem to have existed in the past of the earth. So like if you're tracking what I'm saying here, like how would you respond to this kind of objection?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we tend to divide nature up into the good and the bad. So we think the lamb is good, the parasite is clearly evil. And I don't think that that is really quite right. I think both are creatures beloved by God, and that God embraces both, but and plans to bring both to redemption. So the lamb has its failures. I mean, think what it's doing to the poor grass. I mean, we think of the lamb as a gentle animal, but I mean, from the grass's perspective, the lamb is wretched. And so we're in this world where everything exists by depending on others. And it's interesting. Charles Kingsley, the sort of 19th century pastor theologian who first sort of responded to Darwin positively, in a lecture he gave a few years later, talked about how I was really disturbed by this. I mean, God made a world where everything exists by forcibly eating everything else. It just seems horrible. And he thought, well, actually, I think I can flip that on its head and say, God has given us a world where everything supports everything else, where everything is given to everything else. And so I think to some extent, it depends on which way you read that, where we all sustain each other through these ecological trophic lines.
I think reading Richard Swinburne really helped me see this point, because he was talking about animal suffering. And like a lot of the times, at least I think when this argument gets presented like against God, we picture his evolution as like something like the Hunger Games almost, where like everyone's just out there to like destroy each other and last one standing lives. But it also like the animal like world and like our world involves a lot of cooperation. Like we couldn't do things like solely on our own. And I think that's a great point that you're trying to bring forth, Bethany, is like there's so much more to like life and like looking at like the process of evolution than just like a mere like Hunger Games or something like that.
Yeah. So I think it was Sarah Coakley and Martin Novak did some work on this, kind of talking about how we tend to emphasize the competitive nature of evolution because that's theologically problematic. But there's actually a lot that's built on cooperation and altruism as well. Now, I mean, I say that with a cautionary note because people can get carried away and be like, evolution's not bad. Look at all the cooperation, and it's like, well, yes. So there's interspecies and interpersonal, interanimal cooperation at various points, but sometimes these are kind of like looking at human gangs as great, examples of coordination. Yeah, they're coordinated. Yeah, they're working together, but usually for a goal against some other. So I sort of I put forward that there's cooperation, while also saying, but generally that cooperation sits within a larger framework of conflict. But it is intriguing that as life has continued to evolve, what we've seen is greater complexity, greater interdependence, greater sharing, I think, than the earliest life forms where everything was sort of out for itself.